He didn't even lower his voice when he said it. Too old. The word fell onto the white tablecloth like a stain that would never come out, and the clink of silverware around them suddenly felt deafening. Rachel's fingers tightened around her phone, her smile frozen in place as if her face hadn't yet received the message her heart already understood. Across from her, the man she had agreed to meet after weeks of hesitation leaned back in his chair, scanning her face like he was evaluating a product that didn't match the description online. 42, he had repeated earlier with a thin laugh. You look good, for your age. And now this. Too old. If you were sitting there, dressed carefully in the blue blouse you bought after convincing yourself you still deserved something new, would you defend yourself? Would you laugh it off? Or would you feel that quiet, humiliating collapse in your chest, the one that tells you maybe the world has decided your expiration date has passed? Rachel felt all of it at once. The restaurant in downtown Chicago glowed with soft yellow light, wine glasses sparkling under chandeliers. Outside, traffic hummed along Michigan Avenue like life was moving forward for everyone except her. She had spent years moving forward alone. After her divorce from Aaron, she poured everything into raising her daughter, Madison, working double shifts as a nurse at a small clinic on the South Side. She learned to ignore the mirror. Learned to swallow loneliness. Learned to tell herself she didn't need romance, that love was something for younger women with smoother skin and fewer regrets. But her friend Megan had insisted she try again. You deserve to be seen, she had said. Now she felt painfully visible. The man across from her checked his watch, his expression already halfway out the door. He talked about his active lifestyle, his preference for women who could keep up, his desire to start a family someday. Rachel nodded politely, even though he had known her age before he ever asked her to dinner. She tried to keep her posture straight, tried not to let the sting reach her eyes. She had been through worse than a stranger's careless words. She had survived betrayal, empty bank accounts, nights crying quietly so Madison wouldn't hear. Still, this hurt in a way she hadn't expected. When he finally stood, offering a quick apology about an early morning meeting, Rachel forced a gracious smile. She told him she understood. She always understood. She watched him walk away, his reflection disappearing in the glass doors. For a moment, she just sat there. Have you ever stayed seated after someone walked out on you, pretending you were waiting for something else so the room wouldn't see your embarrassment? Have you ever wondered if maybe they were right about you? Her chest felt hollow. She reached for her purse, calculating the cost of the appetizer she hadn't touched. She hated wasting money. She hated feeling foolish even more. And then, from the next table, a chair scraped softly against the floor. She had noticed him earlier without really noticing. Mid-30s, dark hair flecked with the first signs of gray at the temples, wearing a simple navy blazer. He had been alone, reading something on his tablet, occasionally glancing around the room. Now he stood. Rachel immediately assumed the worst. Pity. She braced herself for that look people give you when they think you've just been publicly humiliated. But when he walked toward her table, his expression wasn't sympathetic. It was steady. He asked if the seat was taken. She hesitated, caught between pride and exhaustion. Finally, she shook her head. His name was Marcus. He didn't mention the man who had just left. He didn't offer condolences or commentary. Instead, he told her that he had overheard just enough to know she deserved better than to eat alone after getting dressed up for an evening out. There was something unpolished about him, something sincere that didn't feel rehearsed. At first, Rachel kept her guard high. She had spent years protecting her heart like a fragile heirloom. But Marcus didn't interrogate her about age or timelines or expectations. He asked about her work. When she spoke about her patients, the elderly woman who brought her homemade cookies every Christmas, the single father struggling to afford medication, his eyes didn't glaze over. He listened. Really listened. He told her he taught history at a public high school in Evanston. He spoke about his students like they mattered. He admitted he had been married once, too, that it had ended quietly, not dramatically, but painfully all the same. There was no competition in his tone, no comparison. The longer they talked, the less Rachel felt like an item on a checklist. At one point, she caught herself laughing. Not the polite laugh she had used earlier, but something real, something rusty from disuse. She felt warmth spread through her chest, cautious but undeniable. Hours slipped by. When the check came, Marcus reached for it without ceremony. She protested lightly, out of habit more than conviction, but he smiled and told her he considered it a thank you for the conversation. Outside, the Chicago air was cool, carrying the faint scent of the lake. Street lights reflected on the pavement like scattered stars. Rachel wrapped her coat tighter around her shoulders, suddenly aware of how different the night felt from when she had arrived. Marcus didn't ask for anything from her. He didn't rush. He simply asked if he could see her again, maybe for coffee, somewhere less formal. Somewhere that felt less like an audition. She studied his face in the glow of passing headlights. There were lines near his eyes that suggested both laughter and worry. He wasn't perfect. Neither was she. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to shrink herself to be chosen. She said yes. In the weeks that followed, something slow and steady began to grow. They met for walks along the lakefront. He brought her soup when she caught the flu. She attended one of his school plays and watched him beam as his students took their bows. He met Madison and didn't try to win her over with forced enthusiasm, he simply asked about her art projects and listened. There were moments of insecurity. Rachel still caught herself comparing her reflection to younger women at the clinic. She still heard that word echoing sometimes old. But each time doubt crept in, Marcus met it with patience, not flattery. He reminded her that life had etched strength into her face, not failure. One evening, months later, they returned to that same restaurant. Rachel had suggested it, almost daring herself to confront the memory. They sat at a different table this time. As she looked around the room, she realized something profound. That painful night had not been the end of her story. It had been a doorway. The humiliation that once burned now felt like a strange kind of blessing. If that man hadn't stood up to leave, Marcus might never have stood up at all. Sometimes rejection is not a verdict. Sometimes it's protection. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed Marcus's hand. She thought about all the years she had believed love had an age limit. She thought about the version of herself who almost stayed home that night, convinced she was past her prime. If you have ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or told you are too much of something or not enough, please pause for a moment and ask yourself, whose definition are you living by? Before this story ends, I want you to share something in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated, only to discover it led you somewhere better? Rachel would later say that the worst blind date of her life gave her the greatest gift. Not because another man chose her, but because she finally stopped believing she was unworthy of being chosen at all. And if this story truly touched your heart, if it reminded you that it is never too late for dignity, love, or a second chance, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing so more people can be reminded that sometimes the person who stands up for you changes everything.